please welcome Hugh Bonneville and Alan Leech.
You may sit.
Thank you very much.
You may sit down.
No, enjoy, bask
Very
in
kind.
the glow.
Thank you for that lovely welcome.
Thank you very much.
So, Hugh, when the TV series was first released, can you hear me now? Okay, when the TV show was first released, ITV in the UK wasn't keen into publicizing and the TV show, and now you just earned $33 million at the box office.
Yeah, not personally, but at the box office, yeah.
So how does it feel?
It feels sort of Yabu sucks to ITV, is what I feel. No, I mean the history of the germination of this entire project was obviously from the brain of Julian Fellows and our executive producer Gareth Neame. They'd been pitching a show to various networks, and it wasn't getting anywhere. So over dinner, a commiserating dinner, Gareth said, "What about revisiting the territory of Gosford Park?" And that started the idea. But no one wanted to really touch it. Well, Gareth knew that going to the BBC would be done in a certain way, and ITV got behind it, but on the proviso that the understanding was that costume drama was dead, and that no one would want to go see it, and that we might just limp through one season. And so when we finished the first season and we came to publicize it, we couldn't even get interviews on ITV, because they said it's not really our audience. And you think, well, this is really screwed up here. And then the first episode went out, and then the second episode went out, and the figures went up, which is not common. And then they were begging for us to go on and chat shows on ITV after that. So to come to this point now, 9 years later, is quite extraordinary. And we've been back together. The band got back together over the last 10 days, and for us to have travelled around a bit, particularly in the States, and the extraordinary warmth we've received, we thought it would open okay, but you're up against Sly Stallone and Brad Pitt, and
and Jennifer Lopez on a pole.
And now you've got Maggie Smith bashing up, Sly. So it's extraordinary. So we really are having a sort of pinch me experience.
But it has become a cultural phenomenon. Did you have any inkling when you started filming and that it was going to become such a cultural phenomenon?
I don't think any of us did. I remember on the very last day, everyone said their goodbyes as if, "I'll see you on the next job." Not this one. This is finished. And, "See you on the next job, love," is actually what Jim Carter said to me. Little did we know that 10 years later we would have finished 6 seasons and then have the feature film. We all hoped, and obviously you always hope when you're part of a job that it goes well. And it's not just about actors or the writing. It's all the different elements. And Downton was just one of those very special things where everything went right. I don't know if Downton would be Downton if it wasn't for Highclere Castle. Had we not got that place, if it wasn't as iconic a structure, and when you see it, it is kind of awe-inspiring. Had it been a smaller house, would that have had the same effect? I think all the elements worked, and it helps when you have a 2-time Oscar winner getting some of the best lines ever written.
But Alan, also your story is quite unique because you went into audition for only 3 episodes, right?
Yes.
And then also it was supposed to be a Yorkshire chauffeur.
Yes.
Can you tell us that, because it's quite an amazing story.
Yeah, so I had an experience of working with Hugh and Maggie, that Julian wrote and directed a movie called From Time to Time. And after that, I went in and I auditioned, or I was sent the script for John Branson, who was a Yorkshire chauffeur. And when I came in, Julian was there and he said, "Keep your Irish accent." And of course, being an actor, I'm like, "But I've been working on my Yorkshire accent for weeks." But he said, "No, don't do it like that. Do it with your own accent. I have an idea." And that's where Tom Branson was born out of. And I thought, well, I'll do it with my Irish accent. I walked out thinking, well, I'm not going to get that. So that's fine.
But also after Lady Sybil, correct me if I'm wrong, you actually tell in one of the first scenes, you tell Lady Sybil, I'm going to be more than a chauffeur.
I know.
Which actually, you've become more than a chauffeur.
Most definitely, and I'm very grateful to Julian for doing that, because I think so often he could have taken Tom Branson and said, let's leave that story there. When Jessica Brown Finley decided, as completely her right to, when she said, I've done 3 seasons, I want to move on, and when he wrote the scene where she died at childbirth, I thought, well, this is the end of Tom. It's easier for Julian really to say he goes back to Ireland or he goes somewhere else, and he chose not to. And I love the fact that he always went the harder route, probably for writing and as well for the character. He gave him a difficult route, and I love the fact that in the movie, Tom's been a victim of circumstance throughout his life, especially with Downton, and Lucy is perfect for a love interest because she's a victim of circumstance too. She never chose this life either. She's born into it, and she's been hidden, and people have been ashamed of her, and now suddenly I love the idea of them dancing away from everyone else as well, because they're part of it, but they're on their own, and they're almost the future.
Were you surprised when you read the script and all of a sudden, I mean, you're instrumental, I mean, you're almost, I mean, no, you're not almost, you are the lead of the film. I mean,
I think this is an ensemble, it's always been an ensemble, and I wouldn't say that too loudly because Maggie will hear you. But it's funny that when I read the script, we all were sent it at the same time, and it was in this kind of very secretive document that when you opened it, and once you had to read it immediately, and then it kind of exploded. And Hugh rang me immediately and went, Christ love, you've got more plots than an allotment. So I really was delighted. I mean, it was lovely to see Tom have that arc. But the scene at the end, the dancing scene, wasn't in the script.
which is lovely.
Liz Trubridge, our brilliant producer, had the idea when we were doing the ballroom scene, and she approached myself and Tuppence and said, I have an idea, and it was supposed to just be in the credits at the end, was just the two of us dancing on our own. And Gareth Neame, our other producer, said, never going to make the movie, never going to make it, no. And we shot it in about 25 minutes. It was my very, very last day, and then suddenly it's there, and it's in the movie.
You were in a rush to get to the Bohemian Rhapsody premiere.
I was.
Yeah.
So I actually said, I don't think it's important. We don't need it. I also didn't want to have to learn a dance. So I was like, no, I don't. No, there's no need. And I'm so glad now that it is there, because it's such it's a lovely full stop for him as a character.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Hugh, the writing in this, in not only in the movie, but of course in the TV show, the characters bounce off the page. We just have to listen to the words, and we know which character is speaking. Can you tell us about working with that sort of writing?
Well, you're absolutely right, and I can remember reading the very first script before anybody was cast, and it's one of those frankly rare occasions where you could sort of cover up the name of the character, and you knew which one was speaking, because they do each of them have their own voice and their own rhythm. And I think that's a great, that's a testament to Julian, because he's an actor himself, and so his ear for dialogue and his ear for the rhythm of speech is great. And it was very rare that we'd need to change anything or challenge anything, and usually there was if you get a speed bump, as one calls it, in a line, it's either your own misunderstanding of the line, or there's just maybe a phrase, a beat missing, a word missing. But the great thing with Julian is you write him, if there's a question of sense of a line, I would email him a one-line question, and you'd get 2 pages in response. So he absolutely inhabits each of these characters. He is as much Mrs. Patmore as he is Robert, Earl of Grantham. And he talked quite a lot to me about how his father, he sees a lot of his own father in Robert, and so that was very sort of reassuring, because I know he had a great respect for his father, who was clearly a patriarchal figure, but and a conservative, but a fair and liberal-minded man as well. And I think those textures of combination of traditionalism, but in Robert's case, glacially slow, progressive, outlook. I find really rewarding to play, particularly in the first season. I did actually occasionally, ring him up and say, "What's happened to Robert's IQ? It's got really low." he can't see the obvious things in front of him, like his daughter's, paralytic with grief, and he's sort of soldiering on. And he said, bear with me, and usually by the end of the season, the arc was such that he'd done something, that redeemed him from being a complete dolt.
Which actually was one of the things that I loved about the film, is that we have seen you through so many seasons where you're dealing with your daughters and all this crisis, and then the financial crisis, which you caused most of the time, but then your character seems to be incredibly calm and in a good place in the movie.
Oh, absolutely. No, I was when I read it through, I thought, good, the youngsters are doing all the work. And Cora and I are set fair, and of course we're excited. Going back to the quality of the writing and the nature of the writing, to have created a plot and a story that affects, through an inciting incident that affects everybody, is quite a smart move, and it's a very challenging one to have created. But the idea of the royal visit, because it does impact every single person, every one of our beloved characters. And I think that's what's smart, is that there's not so much internal strife or internal friction within, as we saw in the TV show. It's actually Downton against the world, or rather, the world comes to Downton, and how do we cope with it? Particularly with the downstairs story of the rebellion of the staff, which is so delicious. And then you've got agony aunt, action hero, and lover upstairs.
I prefer Dr. Phil to the royal family.
So it was just lovely to know, and I think the common thread that people have been giving us as feedback is it's just so nice to be amongst friends again, and that's what we feel. And even though amongst family, yeah, yes, the number of invitations we've already had for Thanksgiving is extraordinary. Robert and Cora are in a good place, and I think that's been it's delightful to play, just being head of the household with the polite nervousness of the royal arrival. That was enough for me.
And Alan, going back to about the idea of the script and Julian's writing, how much of the performances throughout the years shaped the narrative?
I think that Julian, as a writer as well, is very clever. He'll play to an actor's strength, and as you perform per season, he sees something that he's like, okay, that's quite interesting. I mean, Sybil and Branson were never supposed to end up together. In the Bible, as they call it, for the first 3 seasons, it was Sybil and Matthew ended up together. And Branson genuinely was just there as the foil to kind of bring them together, bringing her to the rally. I don't know if you remember, where she gets knocked out. It's not Branson who carries her in. It's seen as Matthew who was the hero. Branson was and he was supposed to get fired after that originally. And Julian thought, actually, no, this is more interesting as a kind of plot line to go with the chauffeur and the lady rather than the entitled heir. So I think he's very malleable in how he approaches the script, which I think is one of the greatest gifts, because he's not too stern. But at the same point, you don't really go in with your own ideas. You trust Julian, and for good reason. When you look at the scripts that we've had and the shows that we've had.
That was also particularly true of Mr. Molesley, Kevin Doyle. Again, it was a sort of visiting part in the first season. But Kevin has this almost Chaplin-esque quality of being, obviously physically hilariously funny, but with this great poignancy about him. And that character, to watch Julian write for him, and to this amazing highlight in the movie. Normally those dining room scenes, we can't wait to get out of there quick enough. But all of us used to stay and watch his close-up, because every time it was golden.
And when Maggie saw him for the first time do that and the curtsy bow, she just stopped. She applauded, and then she said, "Well, isn't that delicious?"
Which actually I was going to ask you eventually, but I'll do it now. How is it working with Maggie Smith? Are you guys scared of her? Or are you afraid of that cane?
I can remember my very first scene in 2010, and I was absolutely terrified of her. Because of the legacy that she brought with her, and her reputation as just a formidable actress. And I can remember my last scene on the movie in 2018, and I was absolutely terrified of her and the legacy that she brought with her. No, she is. I think it's because she. I'm not terrified of her. You just know that you've got to be on the top of your game, because she's so hard on herself. She gets really frustrated if she's not giving of her best, and you'll do 2 or 3 takes, and she'll find some tiny infinitesimal difference that just sets it into this sort of golden level that it's like Serena Williams dialed up to 11, on the tennis court. You can't quite believe where that came from, or where this little nuance came from, but it just elevates it. And Julian has said himself that he loves writing for her because he knows she's going to make his dialogue sound even better. And let's face it, she has some of the best stuff.
And it genuinely is such a joy to watch someone at her age still find such passion and love of her craft. And watching her find those moments, as Hugh said, she genuinely takes joy in her precision. So every day for us, I said every day was a school day with Maggie, because you're literally watching one of the greatest of all time, and you're watching her from 2 feet away. So very, very special.
And I've seen online, Alan, that you do a pretty good imitation of Dame.
Dame Maggie?
Yeah, but not today. Because she'll find out one day, and I'll disappear, and no one will ever see me again. And if that happens, you know where to look. Her basement. Yeah.
Was there a sense of responsibility on the two of you, doing the movie and carrying on?
I think the sense of responsibility, luckily, is shared, and also we are the last people to sort of have to take our part in that responsibility. Obviously, Julian is the first stop, but it was really the visual elements in the show that had to. I mean, I didn't give a wider performance. I just maybe I looked fatter, but I didn't give a you don't change your acting just because you're on a bigger screen. But it was really the visual department, if you like, the cinematography and. Particularly the costume design, which I think Anna Robbins has really raised her game. It's amazing, and thank you. Yeah, absolutely. She's been working. She's gone back to the drawing board literally by finding contemporary designs from that era and going to what's the costume house, Fortuny, and working with them, finding original fabrics but making new costumes. These aren't sort of hoiked out of a rental store. These are particularly Lady Mary's beautiful blue dress. Which he was explaining last night about how it was made, and it's just remarkable, the science of dressmaking. I never knew. But to have that writ large on this bigger canvas is truly gorgeous to watch. And I think Ben Smithard, our cinematographer, because I think that's the gamble you do when you take a show from the TV to the big screen. And I think the unwise producer thinks we've got to make it big, we've got to do something bigger, we've got to change the engine room in some way. But I think this treads the fine line between doing another episode, in effect, and continuing the story of these beloved characters, but actually letting it fill a bigger screen from the horse parades, to the ballroom sequence, to really just the way you're seeing the house from angles you've never seen it before.
Yeah, we're used to seeing it from the ground, and all of a sudden we're above.
Yeah,
above
and
we had a helicopter shot, which we nearly ruined, because we're like, look, it's a helicopter, and we were all outside going, look. They're like, you're in the shot. Get out.
Speaking of the horses, that it's a pretty spectacular sequence. The King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery. It was the first time in film that we've gotten to see that. Tell us about.
Oh, that was a really the cinema gods and the filming gods have always been kind to us on these big set piece sequences throughout the entire series. Be it the declaration of war at the end of season 1, or the cricket match, or the point-to-point sequence. These sequences take 3 days to film, and obviously you need consistent weather, be it sunny or rainy or whatever. And we were so blessed again with this parade sequence, and that shot of the horses coming down the street with the sort of dust and the shimmering light was just spectacular. But these, the troop were with us for 2 days. The forecast held. There were, whatever it was, 80 soldiers and the gun carriages and everything. And these are, this is the real thing. These are the King's Troop. These are the ceremonial horses and gun carriages that are used in public events, royal events. So you have the gun carriage that carried the coffin of Lady Diana Diana, through, and they all have these little silver plates on marking which gun carriages have been involved in which event. So there's a huge amount of history and pageantry involved. And the horses are color-coded. I only learnt this. Did you know this on the day? That the darker horses are used for funerals. So they were on the left as we looked, and then they go through the sort of spectrum to the lighter horses for the, I don't know what, rodeo. Happy pageants.
Yeah. I love that Hugh just said rodeo. You know those famous King's Troop rodeos? Yeah. So, coming to Santa Barbara next week, actually. So get your tickets now.
So things like that was really special, and they were remarkable because unlike most actors, they hit their marks because they are regimental about it, and to have them on board and part of us as the team was really special.
You welcome into the cast the incomparable Imelda Staunton and Simon Jones, and among other new, what was it like to, bring into the fold the new actors?
Well, I can speak from experience being a new actor to come into the fold in the first season, and the welcome that I got was so warm, and they immediately put you at ease on going on to this show with such remarkable and talented actors. You always felt that you were immediately part of the family, and I'm happy to say that I don't think that's changed through all 6 seasons and into the movie. We actually, as Hugh says, we're kind of tired of looking at each other after 6 years, so we're always like, oh, a new person. But having someone like Imelda, and I worked with Tuppence Middleton actually on The Imitation Game. Yeah. I said hello to her in that movie, so we did a little bit more to do in this. But
which, by the way, is the second film that you've been in that's been nominated for best.
Yes,
Oscar.
Yeah. But bringing these actors in, we're always blessed with such amazing talent to want to come and join the show, and we always feel very lucky. And it was great to have, basically a Hogwarts reunion as well as for Downton. Yeah, it was great.
For both of us, for the two of you, what was it like, if you could take us back to that first reading for the film when all the cast got together? What was that like to be in the room with all of you together?
It was. I just remember having this sort of ridiculously sort of weird grin on my face. It was surprise as much as anything, but that Gareth Neame and Julian and Liz Trubridge, our producing team, had actually managed to get all 15 or whatever it is of us back together, plus these amazing new actors. And looking around the room, and I remember looking at Leslie Nichol and her going, phew, like I can't believe we're here. And it was as if nothing had changed, and yet here we were. It was 3 years on, and I truly think that if we'd not all enjoyed each other's company over these 6 seasons, we wouldn't have been in that room. If 4 or 5 people had said, actually, I'm hanging up my boots now, that's thank you. But everyone, we genuinely did sort of take the plunge together, and that was it's a great credit to. Actually, as much to the fans and the audiences as anything, because it was the support and the affection we've all experienced from around the world has been quite phenomenal, and so the will to get to the starting point was there certainly, and the read through was same biscuits, same bananas, but it was the bigger table.
What was it like for you, Alan?
It was really, really a treat. It was a treat to sit there, and the excitement was palpable. I mean, we all loved the script, and I think it always starts there, because I don't think you would get us all back together if there wasn't the script to carry it from the TV to the cinema screen. But it was genuine excitement. I was sitting beside Michelle, and I felt like going back to school. It was like a school reunion where you actually liked your classmates. So it was really, really special. It genuinely was, and that continued through the whole way filming, and then it feels like a guilty pleasure that we get to join up again and go around the world and talk about it. It really does.
Yeah, and have you had the time to understand what is it, the appeal of Downton Abbey? From my vantage point, I love the fact that there is all these people living in close proximity, and they all have different expectations, and that's the way life is. We all try to set up hierarchies, even in whatever plays we're in. What have you thought about?
Well, yeah, it's a question that's asked of us all the time. What is the appeal? What and of course we continually scratch our heads, but
as does Julian, though. He says, well, if I knew that, I'd bottle it and sell it.
Yeah.
Julian is not going to hate the fact that you're imitating him.
And he's used to
Maggie,
it.
you're,
He's
Yes, he
used to it.
will. But we've done the movie now.
you're scared of Maggie, but not of Julian.
I might work with Maggie again, though, hopefully. So now that I've written Julian off, I'm joking.
We interrupted
so-
you. It's
no,
about the
about the
appeal
family.
and the fact
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the close proximity.
Yeah, well, one of us turned that back on the interviewer the other day, and it was someone from Spain, I think, who said, "Well, it's obvious. It's about family." And actually, we sort of began to mull that over. And yes, it's not just the family of the Crawleys; it's the family, as you say, of the people who live and work in this edifice. And if you want to get philosophical about it, I suppose, in the same way that we are visitors to this planet and we hope to leave it in a better place than we found it. Robert Crawley and everyone in that house are transitory, and it's the Crawley family's duty, Robert's in particular, to try and maintain that house in the best possible way, and for everyone to live and work towards that common goal of just getting through it and passing it on. So I think that resonates, and the fact that there are, so many different strata of society passing through its doors and living and working there. And the really, really crucial thing is that the story of the scullery maid is as important as the story of the Dowager Countess. And that's what's really, I think, held the glue together.
And that the building itself is a character.
That's the
and
principal
that
character.
Downton. Yeah, and what was it like to be is it Highclere?
Highclere Castle, yeah.
What was it like?
It's such a stunning and imposing building, and you're kind of in awe of it. And it was something that after 6 seasons, you take for granted. That's where you go to work on a regular basis. And being away for 3 years, as the car came back up, it does hit you, like how beautiful it is, the architecture, and now what it symbolizes with the show. It feels very special that we've kind of had this journey with that place as well.
I was reading about Alistair Bruce, this historical advisor that you've had, and there was something that he was mentioning, that the upright posture of the time and how we now all hunch over. So how
Wings back.
how did that help you guys develop the characters?
Oh, completely. Alistair Bruce, who himself was a Scots Guardsman and has worked in the royal household in various ways, and his day job is the College of Arms. And when you say, what does that mean? It's all to do with the heraldry. So he helped the Duchess of Sussex design her coat of arms, and he said, basically, the next coronation, I know where everyone has to sit. So he's all to do with etiquette and explain the nobility system, who's in what earls and barons and everything, all that means, which I've forgotten now. But anyway, earls are quite good. But in terms of the show itself, he was crucial because even if he was making it up, and he stuck to it throughout, that there was a house style that was adopted, that the girls would never cross their legs, the men would never do that, cross their own legs. The girls might cross their ankles, but not their legs. And the men would never put their hands in their pockets. That was just a house style that developed. And that the chairs, the back of the chair is for the footman to move, not for you to lean against. That's why, particularly in the era of the corset, everyone would sit much more erect. And equally, the turning at dinner, which is a thing which I'd never known about, which is that the hostess, in order to make everyone at all times feel included in conversation when you're around a large table and can't really talk to the person opposite you, the hostess would dictate that you turn to this person for the first course, and then you would turn to this person, so that no one's left there with no one talking to them. These little details, but he was adamant about it, and probably drove the props department mad with his moving the silverware 1 inch that way and the chair 1 inch that way. But it really, I think, so many people have commented on the sense of at least aspiring to authenticity, and it became this house style and house rule that we just followed, and it seemed to stick and to work.
It also gave us a great understanding of where we were at the start of each season. He would do what we called the Oracle. We called him the Oracle. We called it the Oracle's lecture. And he would literally talk us through. He goes, right, this is what was happening exactly at this time. This is how they would have felt. And he would go through the whole household. So it gave you a great blueprint and structure and scaffolding to start the series with.
Okay, so everybody in the room wants to know, and I want to know, will there be more?
Well, our friends at Focus Features, that's the question to ask them, but where this risky small art house movie has taken 30 million in its first weekend, I think there's an appetite. I think the main thing is there's an appetite from the audience. And you know, we've been on the road for the last 10 days, you know, so we've all been back together, and it's almost become sort of, it's felt so natural to be together again, and the response has been so positive that I think we'd all be up for it, genuinely. And I think there's no point, you know, doing the usual coy, oh, don't know, let's see what, and find out. I think we'd love to, we'd love to, wouldn't we? I think we would.
Absolutely, I think it's something that will always sit as a very special part of all of our careers, including Maggie, even though she says it's the thing that stopped her from being able to go to her local supermarket. She said, I've done movies all my life. Oh, no,
As if she could go to the local supermarket before Downton Abbey.
She said she actually could. Yeah, she said she
With her
could.
2 Oscars in tow.
I don't think she brings them to the supermarket, but that'd be amazing. Imagine, what's the discount for this then? Oh, I did it.
Well done. Maggie Smith, ladies and gentlemen.
Red dot right here.
Thank you both so much. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.